Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another education panel. Our previous panel facilitated an interesting discussion around the role of research and innovation in higher education. Moving on from that, we will now discuss yet another important aspect of education in India. CSR initiatives and donor agencies have long functioned as silent partners in the education system. The COVID-19 scenario, however, has rerouted priorities towards healthcare, and the future of education lies in jeopardy. As schools and universities invest in developing technological infrastructure to enable students to learn from a distance, the support of CSR and donors becomes even more valuable. So join us today as we discuss the role of CSR and donor agencies in delivering education in COVID-19 times and beyond. To moderate this discussion, I would like to introduce Ms. Sarika Gupta Bhattacharyya, Director for Development for Plaksha University. As part of the leadership team at Plaksha, Ms. Bhattacharyya is responsible for raising funds and donor stewardship in one of the largest collective philanthropic initiatives. In 2011, she decided to follow her passion and successfully build Beyond Diversity, a purpose-driven social enterprise which is now recognized as one of the global top 10 diversity consulting firms. Ms. Bhattacharyya, thank you for joining us today. Next, we have Ms. Nidhi Pundhir, Director of the HCL Foundation. Ms. Nidhi is an international social development and management expert with a specialization in child rights. She has spent 20 years of her professional life in executing human rights, rights to health, education, and protection from violence in particular. Ms. Nidhi, thank you for joining us today. Our next panelist for the day is Mr. Balakumar Thangavelu, Global Head Education for Cognizant Outreach, their employment volunteering program. Mr. Bala is the key strategist for education efforts of Cognizant Outreach that spans over 185 government schools across 7 states in India with a vision of improving equity, access, and quality of education. Mr. Bala, thank you for being here with us today. Up next, we have Ms. Kavita Anand, co-founder of the Adhyayan Quality Education Foundation, an education movement of school leaders transforming the quality of their schools and the learning opportunities of their students. Ms. Anand has had an illustrious career working with organizations like Aga Khan Education Services, Sir Ratan Tata Trust, and the National College of Teaching and Leadership. Ms. Anand, thank you for joining us. And finally, we have Ms. Menu Bagla, Vice President and CMO for Scient. In a current role, Ms. Bagla is responsible for strengthening Scient's brand reach, relevance, and recognition to deliver accelerated business growth in new and existing markets. Ms. Bagla, pleasure to have you. Now over to Ms. Bhattacharyya to moderate this session.
Thank you, Yamini, for that introduction. I'm very, very glad to see, an education summit like this is being held virtually and during COVID times, because, amongst the largest public healthcare problem which the whole world is facing, this pandemic has been actually disrupting education in a big way. We have so many children across the globe and so many college students across the globe who are sitting at homes and actually partaking education in a way which we have never ever envisioned or ever imagined. So I'm glad that this session is happening, and I'm also very privileged to have some esteemed panelists in my panel. They are far more experienced. Have more greater insights than me. So I'm also here to learn from them. And I would like to, with that note, I would like to actually first kickstart this discussion with Bala. Not only because of the fact that he will definitely have more great insights to share, but also he's the only man in this whole panel. So I wanted to also welcome that diversity in this panel. Bala, when I was sharing this discussion with you about how COVID-19 or this pandemic has disrupted education, you shared some great insights how Cognizant, which has always been in forefront of helping educational NGOs and institutions to really up their game in terms how the education is partaken. Can you give some insights on how you guys have actually coped up with it, and what are the kind of collaborations or innovations which you have taken with your NGO partners?
Thank you so much, Sarika. It really feels privileged, to be part of this summit and being the first speaker. Thanks for this opportunity. I love the diversity and inclusion. So, as everybody went into mental trauma, stress when all of a sudden everybody has to stay at home, work from home. And for us at Cognizant Outreach is an employee volunteering component, which is an ISR component of Cognizant. So where it is part of a culture, it's been there for like past 12, 13 years. We run with motto called "No Volunteer Left Behind." So when everything stopped, when there was an advisory stating that no outdoor volunteering, you can't go out to a school, you can't go out to a student, meet a student, you can't go to a lake and do a cleanup activity. So everything got stalled, and that's when like we thought, okay, right now we can't get bogged down. It's an opportunity. So how do we create opportunity? Yes, students are not available right now. Who are available? Who are the stakeholders available whom we can start helping the community with? And that's when we realized that we have a large amount of teachers who have access to smartphone, who have access to computers. So that's when we thought about creating a lot of virtual volunteering opportunities. So we designed 3 different virtual volunteering opportunities specifically for schools for volunteers to start with. So one is called e-Vidyalaya. So which is nothing but as was in Yamini was telling in introduction. So we support close to 150 plus government schools across India. So right from academic teaching to extracurricular to co-curricular activities. So all those schools were also completely stalled. So we have a role for a volunteer called SRM, School Relationship Manager. So as a volunteer, he is the liaison between the cognizant outreach fellow volunteers and the school requirement and the student requirement. So we reached out to all school relationship managers, and then they started, communicating with the school management and understanding what is that they can do. How can we connect with the students? How can they connect with parents? How can they connect with teachers? What support they can offer to resume the school back or resume the connect back? If not the academics, can they do some emotional intelligence program, mental wellness program? So something that we started doing. So that's the e-Vidyalaya program. Second is called e-Drona. e-Drona is a digital enrichment program wherein, as we speak today, we are currently training close to 8,000 plus government school teachers across Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Telangana, and Maharashtra. So we started with 3 layers of e-Drona program, starting with digital mastery. All the government schools teachers, completely it's a new normal. Opening up a computer, opening a WebEx, opening a Zoom meeting, and somebody not going on mute, somebody on mute. So it was completely new normal. So we started with basic digital literacy program for the teachers, and then we took the next level of digital teaching, how to effectively deliver an online classroom. And third level, we have partnered with Adobe to deliver an Adobe Digital Disher program, where Adobe Spark module is given free licenses for the government school teachers, and cognizant volunteers train them. Right now we have partnered with Telangana Intermediate Board, and 5,000 plus teachers are getting trained as we speak today. So that is something that for the teachers we have started e-Drona. Third level, which I would like to stop with my last thing. So e-Shiksha is an initiative that we have started internally to reach out to students, virtually connect. Can we virtually improve their literacy level, their numeracy level through phone call connect? So we have started programs around that, and we have also started connecting with parents. A lot of parents are financially deprived, lost their livelihood. So we have started financial literacy program for parents over the phone call. So that is something that through virtual volunteering program we have started doing it, and we have partnered with Tamil Nadu Education Department as a consulting exercise. What we have tried to do is that we have built a school reopening readiness index for the government, so which clearly puts on a 90-point parameter. If the parameter is filled for any school in the government, so it clearly puts that school into a green, red, amber zone, which clearly says the school can reopen, school cannot reopen, or school can partially open. So that is something that we are jointly working with Tamil Nadu government along with this. So these are some of the things. And finally, funding also, we are looking at some long-term projects. So learn from home. Can we give devices to the rural school children? And what happens after COVID, the devices, where it goes? So can it be turned into a blended learning aspect? So these are some of the aspects. So 3 aspects: virtual volunteering, funding, and consulting exercise is what we do from a cognizant outreach point of view. So thank you so much for the opportunity. For now, I leave it for the other to hear from others. Thank you.
Yeah. Bala, thank you so much. I think you really hit the nail on the head that how corporates can actually reach out, not only in terms of utilizing their experience and expertise of solving a problem in a large scale basis, using both human resources, which is available within the organization, the technology aspect of it, and as well as the collaboration with the government to look at the resources, both financial resources and the human resources. That's amazing. And I'll just pass on this question to Nidhi, because Nidhi is from HCL Foundation, and I would like to pose this question that in a very large tech giant and organization like HCL and many others also, would you like to build on what Bala said? What are the kind of different collaborations and synergies which you also foresee will happen? And also what HCL has been doing during this crisis to make sure that no child is left behind, because education is one of your primary goal as well amongst your CSR initiatives.
Right.
So thanks, Sarika, and thank you, Bala, for making that note that how quickly we had to re-engineer our programs and to ensure that not many children get impacted with this COVID crisis. And I think there was this high feeling of solidarity amongst everyone. Even I would say as the pandemic started, and that was the time when we were almost ending the academic year in most of the places. So I would say that of course, as HCL, we were extremely proactive, and we were quite conscious of the fact that one, we didn't want to disturb our regular long-term programs, so we continued. And we have, I would say, a very large fraternity of partners out there. So first thing was we reached out to all the partners and we said that please don't lose your focus from the long-term development programs, because whenever you have emergencies like this or disasters, what happens is we end up putting all our funds into relief activities, because relief will be never ending. Government needs all that support, communities need, and there's a lot of devastation that happens. But with experience, we knew working in emergencies that not more than 20 to 30% of your current resources remaining must be around restoration and rebuilding, because the emotional as well as the resource level as well as the action level, everything kinds of starts getting into a shock kind of a situation. And that's exactly what we all experience, not only in India but globally. So that's where I would say that up to 70% of our attention in the first 3 months was on restoring the programs. Now, how do you really restore a development program which is working in extremely difficult situations, the rural areas where we work, or the urban slums and the urban population with whom we work? Because as a core philosophy of the CSR that we do, we reach to the unreached. And that's the kind of focus that we have. The children with whom we have been working all these years are children in most difficult circumstances. Think about working children, think about children living on streets, think about children who are out of mainstream in rural areas, having difficulties in understanding the regular curriculum, children with various kinds of abilities in the sense, so that is the whole target group that we are talking about. And keeping that in mind, what we immediately started to do was that we started to track each beneficiary through various means. And there came, obviously there are 2 3 clear things which all of us have experienced, and it hasn't been easy. One is the digital divide, and the digital poverty situation. And that is where I think corporates like us and other corporates also have made a significant, as well as the NGO partners and people working from CSR organizations directly, have made a significant effort to reach out to every learner. And that's, Bala also spoke about various e-platforms, and we also took that as the first resort, that first let's reach out to the teachers. And obviously the training was an issue, and for teachers to be able to also accommodate themselves into this new environment. So not only academics but also sports. So how does the fitness, because we have a whole lot of focus on sports also, how do children keep up to their fitness levels, their nutrition levels? Because one major difficulty that we faced was that there was nothing to eat. Forget about nutrition, there were days where there were no rations in the community, there were no livelihood. So we've actually gone through a very tough phase. And that's where I would say, coming back to your question, that the corporates, of course, the public-private partnership, and that's where the MOUs which we already had with government came very, very handy, because in every district we knew the basic shiksha adhikaris, the school principals, the teachers. There was this whole direct community of, I would say, people who are worried about learning, and that community was activated very quickly. And that's where I always say that there has to be a formal partnership between the stakeholders who are responsible to achieve the sustainable development goals, or the national policy framework on education. And that's what, since we have been able to actualize till the last level, I think that's something which which has been quite handy. And 3 months have taught us a lot. I think we took that time just to sit back and, we just remodulated, we just reinvented. I mean, same workbook, which was perhaps Abha Sada was available as, or ABCD or 1, 2, 3, 4 primary or upper primary, everything has been converted into e-learning modules. And we are ready. And I'll stop there and maybe we come back to it again. But just to sum up, I think corporates with their corporate style of working, with their result-oriented nature, and having a business case for it. Because at the end of the day, we just can't have one academic year just go like that. For children, especially the children who have made it with a lot of difficulty to this level. We are not catering to the children who have, we are catering to the have-nots. And that's where I think we converted the mode to something that we internally define as education in emergencies, and that's what we're working.
So Nidhi, thank you so much for sharing that, and that was a good insight to have, that how in the last 3 months almost every organization was also trying to reinvent the whole thing, because you had to rethink, reimagine, reinvent of how you are actually dispersing your services for both NGO partners, both for the corporates in terms of how they're partnering with the NGOs. I know Kavita has a lot to say on this, but Kavita, just hold on to it. I'll quickly jump to Meenu out here on so that we can have a quick insights of what's happening, and maybe take on the other side of the table also of what are some of the things which you guys have done. And I'm sure the innovation which is happening at the grassroots level, you'll be able to throw a lot of insights and light on it. Meenu, you come from an organization, Scient, which is well known in the space of innovation and engineering. I would like to hear from you, because Scient has also been disrupting a lot of things in many other places. I would like to know from you in this, specifically in education space, and also during these last 3 months, as Nidhi spoke, that everything had to be reimagined and reinvented, and now we are ready to possibly scale it up or take it to a larger level. What has been your experience? What has been Scient experience, and what are the kind of innovations or disruptions you guys have seen at the ground level?
Sarika, first and foremost, thanks so much for inviting me to this panel. I'm here as a passioneer for the cause, as I mentioned, right? And in fact, our Scient Foundation head, Krishna Devi, will be able to probably speak for hours about what we do for the last 2 decades. But just to step back, okay, I truly believe that education is our passport to the future. And only those of us who are ready for it today can make an impact to the tomorrow. And I'm proud of the fact, Sarika, that even before governments and organizations were given mandate that certain percentage of their profit should be invested in CSR, I think Scient had been investing in CSR for the last 2 decades without any mandate. And at the center of our entire CSR agenda is education. So we in fact brought in and consolidated all our CSR educated agenda under Empowering Tomorrow Together very recently. And you must have heard about from Mr. Reddy, who himself is he's a chairperson of the CI Education Council. So I can tell you that our education agenda relied on 3 major pillars. How do we increase the reach, relevance, and resilience of our education system, right? So reach focused on increasing the accessibility of our education across the class, across the echelons, right? And we have this program which is from 6 to 60, right? How do we increase the reach of education from 6-year-olds to 60-year-olds, right? So that's on the reach part of it. And clearly on the reach, our biggest learning is, while there is a need for digital technology, while there is a need for collaboration, what was required is fundamental grassroots help. And I think Nidhi pointed out, right, that while education was a great agenda, we realized nutrition, food, healthcare, educating and evangelizing that you got to wash your hands, do you have water available, right? So in the communities that we operated in, our first task was, can we go ahead and educate and evangelize on what's required for us to survive before we go ahead and educate, right? So I think, to just give you a perspective, as Scient Foundation ourselves, we had adopted around 28 government schools. And as a part of our larger partnership with Swachh Pathshala Abhiyan, we adopted 54 more government schools. And as a result, we very, very at a grassroots level, all that we did was build cleaner toilets. And before you go into creating this really high profile reskilling and upskilling agenda, that was the need. And we saw the girl child student retention rate go up by 86%. So that's the past, right? But today, when you look at the grassroots innovation, and we were discussing, I think in our earlier discussion this week, is that when you talk about innovation is as simple as putting a loudspeaker and getting the kids to hear about your courses in the villages where there is no access to internet, where there is no access to TV and radio, right? So clearly that's the grassroots innovation that we saw. And I think for the last for the last decade or so, we have probably reached out to more than 100,000 kids and enabled them, to learn to get fundamental education. And coming to the digital side of it, how have we enabled, right, education reach through digital? Through our Science Foundation with their volunteers. And what we did was we converted all our Science digital centers, 70 of the digital centers, as almost training ground. And all our trainers were converted into volunteers who would enable the teachers, as Bala also rightly pointed out, to learn about how do I open a computer? How do I open a web? How do I access an internet? How do I reach out to my students? And so on and so forth. So almost 10,000 plus teachers are enabled through the entire Science Digital Center as well. So clearly you could see that the reach and relevance part was important. But at the policy level, Sarika, I think a lot of us have realized the long-term impact will come at a policy level. So, and thankfully our chairperson, Mr. Reddy, has worked with the CII as well as with the AICT to see how do we create resilience in our policy level and education system. So those are the three big pillars, Sarika.
No, thank you so much for sharing, and totally couldn't agree more in terms of the amount of great work which has happened in the past. And I hear from all three of you that how digital accessibility, digital literacy, both for the teachers and the students, and maybe even parents in these cases. But there's a question which is coming out on the chat box also in terms of what will happen when in India, where there's a huge digital divide. I would say almost 60% of the Indian population who live in rural villages don't have an accessibility to any kind of connectivity. Forget about digital connectivity. They don't even have access to electricity at times, intermittent access to electricity. I'll actually, pass on this question to Kavita, who has been working really at the ground level, day in, day out. I mean, she's a veteran in this space. Kavita, why don't you throw some light? Some of the challenges which is happening at the ground level. Why don't you tell everyone in terms of some of the challenges which is facing? And of course, there will be challenges on funding, human resources, and from your perspective, from your experience, what could be the possible solutions where we can create this win-win? Because I'm sure you can see that even the corporates want to do more. The donor agencies want to do more, but they're also looking for possible solutions, possible reach. So Kavita, why don't you throw some light on that?
Thank you, Sarika. I think it's been lovely to listen. Actually, it's a good thing you kind of got me in last, because I could listen to all the people who have two very big advantages. One, they are linked with organizations that have provided them with funding which is consistent and constant. And so the ability to sit back, think, relax and revamp your organization's perspectives, etc., can happen because you have that absolute privilege of having that regular funding. And I think that's just something that should become like a red flag, because we all know that there has been a big tragedy. I mean, the COVID has really disrupted everything. But it has taken away livelihoods from the migrant workers. It has taken away the ability for people to even go out of their houses to get food or provisions for their families. And it has been really difficult. And we completely understand that health requires all the funding. We understand that migrant workers require the funding to go back home. We know people need nutrition. We are absolutely in the midst of it all. I think that civil society organizations that I'm representing here are absolutely working 150% more than they ever have before on these kinds of issues. And I think that's been the biggest contribution, and they've become extremely visible because of that. And that's great. which means that those who've already been in that space, so the ones who've been able to pivot to be in that space, are sort of managing to get the funding and to do the work that they are meant to do, and provide the kind of ground knowledge that all people need, whether it's corporates or whether it's the government. So I think that recognition is coming in there. The ones who've had the difficulty, I think, are the ones who are working in spaces that are not directly connected with relief and rehabilitation. So the entire they've become part of the people who've lost their livelihood, actually. And that's a very big issue, because I think the people in the grassroots who've been working on education, on livelihoods, on water, on sanitation, on a whole lot of other things, suddenly are finding that the money is getting diverted to various funds that have to be, of course, collected. But I don't know if anybody has sat down to say what happens to that entire civil society organization, the large numbers that there are of people who've given their lives to working with people on the fields, on the grassroots, and that's very important to think about. So I love hearing about the fact that you're looking at, Nidhi, a collaborative way of looking at moving forward, and that you're actually taking people into account and consideration, because that's a need. And the other piece that I feel that's happening is, if you're looking at living with COVID, I don't even right now talk about after COVID, because I'm not sure that happens. Then the big question, Sarika, which you said, what's the way forward, would be to start looking at the world as a whole, right? I mean, people don't only need food and rehabilitation or health. They also need to know what to do with children who are sitting at home absolutely doing nothing, or with the fact that they don't have access. So if we can look at the world in terms of what's the well-being and how many players do we have in a space who can work together, and if we can start looking at that, that would solve pretty much for everything that we've talked about right now.
No, Kavita, I couldn't agree more, because while, of course, 3 months ago or 4 months ago, the immediate urgency was to make sure the migrant workers reach home, there is a safety, there's provisions taken care of, people reach the food and everything. But now, of course, it's been 4 months. The immediacy of the whole urgency is still there, but possibly we also need to start looking at it, because, I mean, with the children, actually with the kids at home, you're also stopping the parents to go out and work. Who is going to take care of the kids at home at the end of the day? The midday meals, which the kids used to get in the schools, that's been stopped. So there's an extra pressure on the families. We really don't know where that money, or if those midday meals, I know in some states, some of those midday meals are being, and wherever there is a good win-win partnership between corporates, public and private partnerships coming together, and also the civil society. I know some midday meals are reaching, but is it reaching? Is the efficiency still 100% out there? Also collaboration. I saw a question on the chat box, and this is an amazing question. Collaboration in content. We used to have the CBSE and CRT books and everything, and there was a standardized way of teaching. But right now, what I keep hearing, and I also have a lot of friends who are working in different kind of civil society, as well as in the corporates, who are creating different types of digital content. Is there a possibility to actually collaborate and say, hey, listen, we don't need to spend so much of resources. Maybe we can, collect the pool together. So if Bala is saying that we have created this digital content, Cognizant can come and say, from grade 1 to grade 5, this digital content is there. So I would actually like this question to be open, and you guys can just raise your hand, whoever wants to take it first. What are the different, so we have seen various collaborations going right now. What are the different ways we can now see going forward? We are going to be in this situation possibly till November, December. The vaccine is not going to happen till early next year or maybe late this year. Till then, we have to live with this virus, and it seems schools and colleges will be the last to open. At the end of the day, because I mean, there's so many, I mean, if you look at the whole parameters of the safety, the schools, because of the kids' health and safety and everything, it looks like a last in the parameters to be reopening. In that kind of a scenario, we still have another 5-6 months to go. What do you think could be the next possible steps in these collaborations? Kavita spoke about some very pertinent challenges which they are facing at the ground level. What, if we put our innovation hat on, and there's a great collective wisdom out here, what you could possibly think as the next steps forward? And I would like to hear your thoughts, or even challenge you or provoke you to come up in an out-of-box thinking, and maybe we can find some solution out here. If anybody would like to take a first stance on it. Yeah, Bala, I think you, sorry.
Go ahead,
Bala, you
Nidhi,
want
go
to
ahead.
go ahead?
Right.
Nidhi, go ahead. Okay.
So, I just want to also, Sarika, at this stage where we are talking, and many of the CSRs and NGOs also, we were out on field, and one thing I really want to, pay a lot of respect to our frontline teachers working in the government system also. Let me tell you that for states like Rajasthan, states like Andhra, Karnataka, we saw absolutely a very high level. Can you imagine 100 days? Not a Saturday or Sunday was taken off by these teachers. It was them who were compiling the data of COVID. It was them who were taking care of the isolation and the quarantine centers. The school buildings were turned into quarantining centers. So the principals were made the nodal in charges. And I think we must pay tribute to all of them. And many of us did get an opportunity to be locked up and be safe at our homes, and yet continued to get our salaries, etc. They have actually taken a pay cut also. Government has, I don't know if you're actually following stories from the field. I'm in touch with the principals and the teachers working in the government system. 40% pay or 30% pay, and then with the promise that rest will come. Talking about midday meal also, some of the states like Rajasthan and many other states that we have presence, they have actually taken that as an opportunity. So teachers are actually distributing dry rations in a way, and the government didn't stop that. And the parents are coming and collecting. ECCD system, the ICDS, I mean, we work a lot with the Anganwadi workers and all. The entire duration of lockdown, the nutrition supply was on, and it was being given by the Anganwadi directly to the family. Several communities, be it Tamil Nadu, be it, so we have very strong presence, and we were also working directly with them to ensure that some of these emergency supplies are unlocked from the government system and they reach the most vulnerable groups. So I think it's also a time as a nation we should be paying tribute to our frontline teachers. All this COVID data, I'm telling you, from many states wouldn't have come if it was not teachers. It was health workers who were busy doing the service delivery, and teachers, as always, we can only depend on the intelligence of our education system to give you the right documentation and right data, including, and many states also conducted exams on time. So what we got to be learning from this entire, episode is that, and this is also the time where the strength of the government system, for the first time as citizens, we have actually seen that how everybody was, out there, and there were no offs, there was no this thing. So in future, so what one really needs to do is collaborate extremely. Like, I was just going through minutes sent by our education lead Namrata, and yesterday there was a meeting here in Noida with the basic Shiksha Adhikari, and he said that please continue with your Shiksha Ghars which you were doing in the community during lockdown after. So these are like community level classes. So while we will work through the digital mechanism, yes, e-learning, yes, but there'll be, of course, with social distancing norms and keeping all your containment zones, etc., where I think government has done beautifully, at least in a lot of states where they have been able to mark the containment and zones. But other places, let's open up, let's start in best possible ways without losing too much time, because for children that 1 year is not going to come back, right?
Totally, Nidhi.
So collaborate is what I'm trying
you are saying
say.
Collaborate,
collaborate and function, both, those are critical.
But Nidhi, again, for collaborate and function, sometimes you need those digital tools, you need those human resources, you need those.
I agree. So our data is telling us, we've done a direct assessment that 60% of the families had at least one phone, in the underprivileged sections also. What will happen in next 2-3 months? We'll have to work aggressively to increase this access. I think that's something which definitely we have to.
Sure. So you're talking about giving an access to the electronic the electronic divide or the digital divide which is there to actually build.
Use television, use radio. There are other means also.
So digital divide in different ways, not only about mobile phones, television. We spoke about radio. We spoke about loudspeakers. Bala, you were trying to say something. If you would take
I think just one.
I think Bala Bala was trying to say earlier. I'll come back to you, Meenu, for sure. Yeah.
Thank you, Sarika. So the point I was trying to say is that, for any social impact project that we do, right, like the AAA concept applies: awareness, accessibility, and affordability. So what we are trying to do from Cognizant is that we strongly believe that we have a huge resource that is out online right now. From the Diksha platform to the NGOs, there are a lot of online content and a lot of offline content, like India Literacy Mission. So ILP, India Literacy Project, they have huge offline content. For example, Karnataka State, they have built huge curriculum in Kannada, in English, that's available. It's offline content. Teachers can just pick it up and use it. So to us, what we believe, from my point of view, there is huge resources that is available right now. So what is the awareness that right now currently the teachers and the students and the parents have about it? Do they have the right awareness? And is it accessible for them? And is it affordable for them? Right now, affordability, it's available for free of cost at multiple places. So that's what at Cognizant we are trying to do, take it to multiple places and give them that, hey, these are the platforms that are available. For college education, you have NDL, developed by IIT Kharagpur MHRD. And for school education, you have Diksha platform. So it is already there. You just have to use that. Sorry.
So you're crowdsourcing all the information of different kind of platforms and taking it to your partners and say, hey, this is what is already resources there available. That's beautiful, because at the end of the day, you also need to find which is the right place. You don't have the time or the bandwidth or the energy or the resources to keep searching for it. That's wonderful,
Exactly.
Bala. Meenu,
the point is, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. That's what I'm trying to say.
Meenu, so quickly, because I'm also looking at the clock and I see 2-3 questions on the panel. So I would also want to address that. So Meenu, please, you were saying
I
something.
would say, in addition to what Nidhi and Bala has said, that when we look at innovation, right, the grassroots innovation today, most of the large enterprises, we have a huge amount of population who have now gone back home and they're working from home, right? And they have probably gone back to their hometowns, which are tier 2 towns. How do you tap into that resource? How do you tap into that intellectual capital? And they can teach their local communities there in that language. I think that's something so simple for us to execute. But many a times, we get too bogged down by, okay, we have to digitalize everything. I think, so as I think Nidhi also mentioned,
find local solutions to the local problems.
Absolutely.
Because sometimes we need to look at something very close by. I mean, we can't keep looking at Amazon, whereas there's a Kirana store next door who can easily do and deliver everything.
Exactly.
Fantastic.
Right?
Fantastic.
Yes.
Yeah. So
fantastic. Kavita, please.
As a one-liner is that, simply providing technology and providing content doesn't lead to learning.
Of course.
I'm just wearing my educator's hat at this point in time to say that the way learning happens requires engagement of the children and, with each other, with the teacher, with somebody else who is a mentor, coach. So I think, this kind of thing that we're talking about collaboration, I completely agree with Meenu that identifying or mapping what are the resources available, that would be the most essential thing to do, and then to work together and making something.
What? I will just share one particular example. When the whole lockdown was happening in Pune, there were many senior citizens who live alone because their kids and all, they have moved out. Each mohalla or each locality and community had identified, say, 4 or 5 youth champions who would actually, because it's like, say, a small mohalla community, and they would actually go and say, this one particular youth leader is mapped to, say, 6 families. He or she would go explain how to use the apps, different types of apps, because they don't even know how to use the smartphones, how they can actually access to their medicines, how they can do different things, and also help them to do their errands. I'm saying something like that kind of an innovation to help your local community could be looked at. Having local mentors is what possibly is suggesting.
But Sarika, there's one thing that we should take care of, and that is that there are lots of children who get left out of this. We tend to say, and I think that's the part that people need to be aware of, that it's not okay to have 20% who have online resources all the time, and another 20% that have it some of the time, and then you have the people who have television and whoever can, and you have all of that. But the ones who tend to get left out are the ones who don't have anything and are difficult to reach. And I think we can't forget about the fact that at scale, when we're thinking about solving a problem, we have to look at both ends of the spectrum: the one who's got nothing and the one who's got everything. Yeah.
Totally. Could not agree with you.
I mean, just a quick one, the child protection part. I mean, where you are all planning everything, let's be extremely, extremely cautious on the violence against children, because the incidence rate went up significantly, and including online cases of abuse. Critical. And inclusion of children who are, of course, most disadvantaged, but also children with various forms of
there are many children who are not even safe in their own homes. For them, schools become a safety heaven for them. I just heard the alarm. So because there's another 3 minutes to go, quickly as closing comment from each one of you before I close it, because Yamini, how much time do we have left?
Ma'am, you have 3 minutes left.
3 minutes, exactly. So that's why I was looking at the clock. So quickly, in a 30 to 40 seconds, if you can quickly have some of the comments. And I'll sum up the panel at the end of the day. I got some good insights from here, and I'm hoping that the panel, the audience also got good insights, and they will be available. The audience will be available in the networking lounge for any Q&A, and their email IDs. I think Yamini and CSR Box also have said that you can reach out to them. So quickly running. So Bala, why don't you, I mean, as I said, you are the diversity in the team. Why don't you start first with your quick 30-second comment? We'll take it as a speed round.
Sure. So no child left behind is the motto that all of us should look into it. So in a state that we are working on currently, where they had done a survey for 1.5 crore children, only 35% have online access, 95% have access to TV. So think about no child left behind. There could be children who have a smartphone, who do not have a phone, do not have a basic phone at all. Like, find a buddy for that student. So look at the whole objective, whatever we are trying to do, as holistic, for no child left behind as the only single motto. That currently that is what we are running as a motto, to taking it to teachers and taking it to all stakeholders. That's my one-line statement.
Sure. Nidhi, please go ahead. Let's keep it crisp, because I'm also looking at the clock. I'm the time.
No, I think work harder. This is not the time. I think we've done a lot over years, but this is now, we need to really work for the, micromanage. I'm saying this is the time to micromanage. This is not a macromanagement forum, because every learner would need to be tracked for seeing whether we are making any impact or not. First of all, to find the learner and then bring them back into the system. Avoid duplication. Resources are really receding. Let's not duplicate. Let's collaborate and bring things to scale as much as possible. Let's not lose focus on the first generation learners' parents. They would need to be brought into the system, because we are working in a very, very different kind of context. Sure. And wherever we can work, with openness, let's work, because not every zone is a containment zone. Following social distancing guidelines. And as Kavita also said, that we cannot replace individual and personalized learning with only digital. So let's continue to, work and innovate.
Nidhi, Meenu, please go ahead. And the last word will be from
Kavita. Let's be Atmanirbhar. I think we have to stop looking at, some global solution to come and solve the problem for us. We have world's, top 3 biggest education systems. So I think we need to look at local solutions for our problem statements.
Great. So Pooja is already on the screen. I would like Kavita to quickly have the last say before Pooja kicks us off.
Request to all business CSR donors, whoever, to please seek out, recognize, and celebrate the civil society organizations. Pull them in, make them part of your work, and please do not leave them out. They are the ones who will reach that last mile child.
Sure. Thank you so much, every one of you. I mean, for me, the biggest takeaways has been collaborate. Reinvent, don't reinvent the wheel. Find out what are the resources available and make sure that you don't need to reinvent the wheel again. The last one point I would like to add is there's a very big power in technology. I do believe that, yes, the digital divide still needs to be built in, but that's an infrastructure and policy level. But keeping digital divide, not just keeping the smartphones and internet, as I said, there are many other ways. There are villages which are doing it on radio, the television, and many other ways which is happening. So use those kind of means. And another small thought, the infrastructure which we already have in different kinds of schools in different regions. Can we look at a blended learning now? Since now we already have different kinds of content already on digital. Can we look at a blended learning and maybe think about how we can bring the kids back, but in a social distancing format? The kids don't need to be all 5 days in the school, 2 days in a week or 2 hours in a day, and make it in a staggered format kind of a thing. And some mohalla clinics, the way Delhi has for health, maybe some mohalla tutors, or what you call mohalla youth champions, who can act as mentors and tutors into their small areas. I would say, I mean, I got so many ideas and creative ideas from all of you guys. So the mind is buzzing with it. Thank you so much. I'm sure if we all come together, we can solve. And as Bala said, no child should be left behind. And that's the motto. We should keep it and move ahead. Thank you so much for a really energetic discussion. Pooja, over to you. I hope I kept my time as a moderator. Thanks.
Absolutely, ma'am. Thank you, panelists, for such an informative and engaging session. The session brought out some very pertinent points. It was great to note the various interventions, innovations, and synergetic efforts to ensure that education reaches the last mile despite the challenges. And I hope the audience too is taking back with them important insights and inspiration to move forward in this area.